Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to be covering some of the difference between absolute cell referencing and relative cell referencing. And for that I have this data set with the top 10 most sold car models in the United States in the year 2021. So first of all, let's talk about relative cell referencing. That's probably the referencing that everybody is most familiar with. It's the most intuitive and easy to use. So let's say that I want to have a sum of all of these prices, and I also want to have a sum of the units sold in 2021 and so forth. So I can create here a formula that will sum all of this, and I can simply just copy this formula over and move it to the right, and we can expect the formula to do the same, right? So now I had a range of summing C3 to C12, and when I move this over, it is summing now D3 to D12. Same would apply for rows, right? So let's say that I want to have a new function that will multiply the price by the units sold in 2021. That'll give me a total of sales, and if I drag this down, we can expect it to complete with no problems, right? And that's because we're using relative referencing. As I drag the formula down, the range or the cell reference inside of that formula will also go down one space. This is different from absolute referencing. So let me show you an example of that. So if we want to do something similar here, if we want to know the maintenance cost of each of these cars based on their price, here I have that the expected maintenance of each car is about 10% of their value. So let's say that I want to say, okay, price of the car times the maintenance percentage, enter, and this will work fine for the first value. But now if I drag this down, I'll have empty values. And that's because this is using a relative reference. So if I click on this, you can see that yes, on the row side here, it went down one space for the next one, but it did the same here in the maintenance, and I don't want that to happen. I want us to use the same maintenance percentage for all of these formulas. We can do that by using absolute referencing. And let me show you how that looks like. If we go back to our first formula before copying down, we can change the reference for this value. And that can be done entering $signs for this reference to this cell, which is usually done by pressing F4. If we press on F4, we will rotate between the different types of references. So this is a relative reference, this is an absolute reference, and this is a mixed reference where we will be locking in either the column or the row. In this case, that will be the row. In this case would be the column. So let me show you that. If we want to lock in that reference for this specific value, for this specific cell, we'll have to click F4. That would add an absolute reference that we can identify by the $signs here. And now I can click enter, and I can copy this formula down. And now we see that for each of these functions, for each of these formulas, all of them are referencing the same maintenance cell. However, this portion of the formula is relative, so this will be changed for each of them. So let me show you a little better how this would look from a formula perspective. So if we go to formulas, show formulas, let me make this a little smaller so we can see. So we can see here the first relative formulas that I used. I created this formula and I copied to the next column, And you can see that we don't have any absolute referencing here. This is just relative. Same happens for all of this. You see how it's referencing relatively to the cell. However, here we have our absolute formula. As we move down, our reference for that cell remains the same. And we can play with this as we want. Let's say if for any reason we wanted to have the value of, let's say, the price times the units sold for this, for all of our values, we can do so using absolute referencing. So let's say I want to do this cell, I do F4 to log it in, then I do times, then I do the units sold, and I also log it in. Now when I display this down, the value is going to be the same always, because we are using absolute formulas. So that's a way of logging in the values in that cell. And like I said, there's 3 types of referencing. There's absolute, there's relative, and there's also mixed. Maybe if I show you with the formulas, that will be easier. So let's say here that I have a random formula, right? You can see that now if I want to log this in, or if I want to log a specific column, I can do, let's say, D3. And now if I go down, now it's logged. D3, it's logged, and that's because the row number 3, it's logged. Now let's say that I want to do the same thing with column D. So let's say C3 again, D3, but in this case I want to lock the column. There we go. So let me expand that. And here we can see how it behaves. So we have logged in the column. So in our other formulas, the column is always going to be logged. You see how the row changes though? The only thing that it's not changing between all of this is the reference to column D, and that's because we have it logged. So this is very useful to know, and this is definitely something that you're gonna need to use in some of your formulas, where you're gonna need to log some of the values so your formulas work properly. But that's basically how absolute, relative, and mixed references work. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please leave it a like or subscribe to the channel. Thank you.